Hey everyone, I'm Melissa from Knitting the Stash, and this is episode 175 in the series, I think. I'll have to check before I post it. Anyway, welcome back to the yarn room. It's lovely to see all of you. It is a quiet Sunday here, and I have finished the Vakka Vest, so I feel like it was a good time to pop up here. Maybe this will be a shorter episode, I don't know, but I wanted to give you all the deets in case you're interested in knitting this one. I'm also starting a new sweater project, so it's always fun to kind of get your opinion on what should I do. There are a couple questions I have about that one, so I thought I'd go there and we'll have a little chat about that. For those of you who are new, welcome to the podcast. This is a cast usually about sweater, garment knitting, and modifications and design. So we are going to do all of that today. And if you are coming back, it's lovely to see you. Thanks for all the comments, especially on that last episode, the one about I quit and it's okay. Oh my gosh, you all had so many wonderful stories to share. The comments are just such beautiful stories, and such good to see people being kind to themselves and making choices and being okay with that. And it really filled my heart with happiness to see that. So good job quitting and good job just being you and doing what you do. That was the majority of the comments were just do what you do. It's all good. You know, our time is our time. Maybe we're not around for that long in this world, and you might as well just enjoy it. So yeah. And I will say on that note, we had a sad week this week because we lost a member of the knitting and spinning community. My dear friend Beth Engelbrecht-Wiggins' daughter, Amy Engelbrecht-Wiggins, passed away unexpectedly. And I just want to say she was a wonderful knitter, beautiful spinner. She actually designed a couple of the patterns for Shorn 3. So for those of you who have knit the Wikipedia mitts or socks, those were designed by Amy, and she's just a wonderful, beautiful spinner. Amazing, lace weight spinning, just an inspiration, I think. So we lost her far too soon, and it's a good reminder that it doesn't matter what you do with your, if you quit or if you make a change or whatever, live your life. Live what you got of it and enjoy it. And, my heart goes out to Beth and her family, and yeah, thanks for being such a beautiful soul, Amy. It was wonderful to work with you for those years. And on that note, I know it's kind of it's a sad note. It is, when we lose people in the community, it can be really a sad kind of thing. And I think it's just worth acknowledging that there are a lot of us and we all care about each other in a lot of different ways. And it's nice to see that in this community and to continue kind of keeping that spirit alive. So yeah. So in the spirit of keeping this community alive and sharing things, that's why I'm here. And you can find me just about everywhere as Knitting the Stash over on Instagram and Ravelry and obviously on YouTube, and on the website, which is knittingthestash.com, and that's where all the classes and the Flock Farm Yarn Shop is. So yeah, check that kind of stuff out. We're going to do a Vakka Vest today. And I have some Vakka Vest for me. This is a pattern from Len Knits, the Finnish Knits kind of magazine that they put out. It's Vakka by Susanna Kaartinen. I'm not sure if I'm going to totally be pronouncing that correctly, but I will put it up here on the screen so you can read it. The Vakka Vest is basket weave all over patterning, and I think last time I was about here with the vest, and I was talking to you about the fact that in the photos for the vest, there's some extreme blocking measures that are done here. So I did extremely block this, and you can see that the texture is there, but it's kind of calmed down a little bit, which is kind of the point. And the same with the ribbing. If you look at the pictures that are posted for the pattern, you'll see this kind of thing where the ribbing is not actual ribbing. It's not meant to rib in and kind of pull in the bottom. It's meant to kind of sit as a border for the rest of the garment. Same with this up here and on the sleeves. You're not getting a whole lot of pull in with the ribbing. It really is meant to be kind of spread out and act like a border. So that's where I was last time we talked about those things. I've since finished the vest. I'll give you the 360 tour here, hopefully. Oh, as my mannequin is getting stiff with arthritis, I think. So this is a vest that has these side cables going up from the bottom. It has a split hem. You can see that really nice. There's some nice detailing here. The split hem, rolls right into the cool cable that goes all the way up, and then the cable kind of ends at a good spot and rolls right into the ribbing for the underarms, which is just really, that's some nice detailing. Same with the front. You'll see that, if you do it the right way. This took me 3 tries to get it the right way, I will say. You end up with, one of the columns of the basket weave coming up, and then those 3 stitches end up being your center here, so that you have the decrease going in on each side. Now you can see I made a slight mistake here, because this should be in one, and this should be one, there should be a little bit less, one less row here and one more row here. But after my 3rd try, I was like, it's good. It's good enough. I'm very happy with it. So let me wind this back up so that it'll stand up straight. Yes, there we go. And let's talk about the Vakka Vest. So one of the reasons that I wanted to knit a vest is that I was looking for like a palette cleanser in between projects. I had just finished a sweater for Jean. Yeah, the Weatherman sweater for Jean. And I don't know, I just felt like I wanted something without sleeves, because sometimes you want something without sleeves. And vests this season are huge, and I was kind of thinking of part of this episode could be me talking about all the different vests, but if you go on Ravelry and look at like hot right now, you will see so many vests. Many of them will have a similar kind of detail to the front here that this one has. A lot of them have very wide, deep V-necks. They have a lot of like wide hems. It's kind of like I don't know who pushed the button, but it's kind of a thing this season. So everybody's designing vests, everybody's knitting vests. I don't know, maybe it's a spring thing, maybe it's just a season thing, I don't know. But somehow I got caught in the wave of knitting vests. I'm not really a vest person, but this one just caught my eye. I really like the photographs. I looked at the project pages and I was like, there weren't that many actually, because it's a fairly new pattern. And I thought, okay, it's not quite my style, like to have all over texture on a body piece. If you looked at the rest of my collection of sweaters, I don't tend to go for that. I don't even tend to go for like the all over color work. I tend to go not like away from those kinds of things. But for some reason, this one really caught my attention. I liked the photographs. I thought this would be a quick, fun palette cleansing knit. And I thought, a couple other things. One was it would be good to do it in Shorn 5, which I did. So this is Shorn 5. A lot of you have been knitting with Shorn, and it's been so wonderful to see your projects. Shorn is the small batch yarn that I produced. I produced 5 years in 5 batches in a row, and now it is gone into semi-retirement. But we do have some Shorn 5 left in the shop, in the Flock Farm Yarn shop. We have this oatmeal gray color left a lot. We have some white. The brown is all sold out. So, but if you're interested in knitting something like the Vakka Vest in a DK weight yarn, Shorn 5 might be the right yarn for you. So the last reason that I was thinking about knitting this vest that was pretty interesting is that it is a bottom-up vest, and it doesn't really have a lot of the contemporary design choices built into it, which I thought was pretty interesting. So let me dig into that a little bit. So number one, a lot of us are knitting top down. That's been kind of like the thing to do. Designers are designing top down. It's just one of those things where it's not hard to find a bottom up pattern, but they're not, it's probably 1 in 5 maybe that are bottom up, depending on which style you're going for. If you're looking at like some of the older vintage patterns, those are mostly going to be, a lot of them bottom up, things like that. I started knitting sweaters from the bottom up. That was the first sweaters I made were all bottom up sweaters. And maybe this was like 2012 or so when I started knitting sweaters. Maybe it was a thing back then to like make a comeback. I don't know. But at that point, the sweaters I was knitting were bottom up. So I'm very familiar with bottom up. I'm not put off by it, because I think a lot of knitters are put off by it because they've either never done it or they've heard horror stories about it. And I think the typical problems with bottom up sweaters are that people fear they can't try them on. If you make a mistake in the lower part of the sweater and then you knit the rest, then you're like, out of luck. Like, how are you gonna go back and fix it? I do have a YouTube video about how I've gone back and fixed the length of sweaters that were bottom up sweaters. But for me, I just started there. So it's kind of like when I started spinning, I just would join the fiber and, people just taught me how to do that. And I wasn't afraid of it. Whereas then I started watching a lot of spinning videos and people are like, oh, when your fiber separates, you're gonna have to like get it back in there. And that's gonna be really difficult. I think if you just start with things and you don't know all the terror horror stories or whatever, you just kind of roll with it. So anyway, that's my bottom up story. So this is bottom up. And like I said, it didn't put me off at all. And I was like, okay, this is cool. I'm always excited to get back to bottom up because there are so many sweaters out there that are top down. And I feel like bottom up exercises different muscles, different knitting muscles, different design muscles, different like problem-solving muscles, all those kinds of things. So when you knit a bottom-up sweater, you do have to make some choices about lengths. You have to make some choices, about sizing and things that you're going to be kind of stuck with for the rest of the sweater. So you just have to kind of be ready for that. One of the things about this sweater that was interesting for me is that, and I think I mentioned this last time, a lot of the project pages and people said that it was a simple knit until you get to the division for the neckline and the sleeves, and I would totally agree with that. With one caveat, you do need to kind of get a sense of like how this pattern, the basket weave pattern, works. It's very simple, but you need to get a sense of it so that you're feeling pretty competent and confident with it by the time you get up to the split for the neck and for the sleeves. That way it's one less thing that you're having to actively think about as you knit the rest of this piece. So if you're not having to think to yourself like, oh god, I gotta follow the chart, I need to know which number, line, row I'm on to be able to, that is gonna really it'll get confusing really fast. At the very least, you don't have to know keep track of the cable once you get up to the sleeves and the upper parts of the body, because the cable ends. So you really are just doing the basket weave pattern. But you have to be willing to do like partial basket weave up here into these tiny little strips and be able to know which part you're on, and you have to be able to do a basket weave pattern not only on the right side, but suddenly on the right side and the wrong side. So yeah, you want to get comfortable with it and get a sense of it before you get up to this splitting at the top. One of the other things that I noticed about this sweater, so going back to what I said about it not having some of the contemporary design principles in mind, when you split and you continue your basket weave pattern and you're working your decreases on each, if you're working this will be right front section, you're working your decreases here until you get to the split, and then you're working decreases and decreases here. So you're working eventually decreases on both sides, which can be in and of itself a little bit confusing, especially if you're already working an all over texture pattern. But this pattern does not bring those decreases in by a stitch or two, right? A lot of the advice you'll get about working increases or decreases on the edge of a neckline where you're going to pick up stitches later, or on the edge of a sleeve line where you're going to pick up stitches later, you'll often get the advice to like set everything in by a stitch or two so that you end up with a very smooth edge. So the difference is that if you and you can look this up, like if you Google this or if you look on Ravelry, there are good examples of it. If you simply work your decreases right on the edge stitch, your edge is going to look a little stair-steppy. It's going to look a little wonky potentially to your eye if you've never seen it before. If you work those decreases 1 or 2 stitches in, then your edge remains the same, so it looks really smooth, and you've just set your decreases in just by 1 stitch or 2. This pattern doesn't do that. And I thought to myself, okay, I could impose myself on the pattern, because I always do modifications, right? But with the actual basket weave, I didn't want to kind of mess with the basket weave by setting decreases into the basket weave, because then I was like, I don't know. I think you could do it. It would take a little bit more. I think you'd have to look at the basket weave where you were and think about which decreases or which bind offs you were doing. And sometimes it's a bind off, sometimes it's a decrease. So anyway, and I just wanted to try it again because it had been many years since I had worked a bottom-up pattern where you work the decreases or the increases, you're shaping right on the edge. And I wanted to see what it was like, to remind myself of like what it looks like if you do have a stair-step edge and you're going to pick up stitches later. How does that work out? And I was looking very closely at the photographs and thinking like, okay, well, they obviously followed the pattern and they did the stair-step edge and then they picked up stitches. So let's just see how it goes. So it's kind of like a moment of wanting to be a little old-fashioned in my knitting, I guess, and wanting to just play it out and see how it worked. Now I like the way that it ended up working. I'm going to try to bring this close to the camera here, so you can see that along this edge, it's still smooth. There's no puckering or anything like that, and the basket weave pattern is relatively well preserved along the edge of the neckline. So I'm pretty happy with the way that it came out. Same on the sleeves. The sleeve line here was also stair-step all the way up on both sides and in the back. And it worked out fine. So I guess this is my way of saying, you know what, all that advice about setting your shaping in a few stitches, it's great, especially if you're working in stockinette. You will end up with a smoother edge. You will also end up with little lines next to your picked up stitches. So there are trade-offs. But if you want to do it like the old-fashioned way of just letting the stair steps happen, you can still figure out how to pick up stitches. One of the things I did notice when I was picking up stitches is this side was a knit two together. This side was a slip knit. I'm trying to remember. I'm terrible at remembering the difference. I have to always look it up. But I think this side was knit two together. And when I picked up stitches along this edge, so much easier to see and it was also a slip. There's a slip stitch on every edge plus the knit two together. Anyway, it was much easier to see where to pick up stitches on this side. This side looked almost like it was elongated. So when I was picking up the stitches, I had to just double check that I actually had I had worked the same number of rows on both sides, because this side looked so much kind of like more stretched out and elongated. And that's because of the type of decreases that were called for in the pattern, and my execution of them led to the whole right side just looking a little bit more flabby than the left side. The left side felt a little bit like tighter. So when I was picking up stitches for the neckline, I really had to do a lot of specific counting, and I had to really just kind of do a judgment call on where to pick up those stitches. So you often get the advice that you're going to pick up stitches, every 2 out of 3 or 3 out of 4 if you're going on a diagonal, because row height is different than stitch width. Anyway, you can't pick up row for row, because it'll end up creating weird disfigurement in your fabric. In this case, I actually picked up what felt like I would pick up one, skip one, pick up one, skip one. And that was the way that I managed to get the right number of stitches between here and here that were equal to the number of stitches over here. I don't know if that's all making sense, but if you do end up, I guess the long and the short of it is, if you end up working your shaping right on your edge, you may end up with one edge looking a little wonky and the other edge looking a little bit more shaped and tighter. And then when you pick up stitches to create that V, you might have to do a little bit of best guesstimate on how many stitches to pick up on this side to make it mirror the other side. It worked out just fine. I ended up with the same number of stitches here to here and here to here, but it looked a little weird to begin with. The other thing was, obviously, if you're going to do this center line, you need to have purl stitches on either side. They don't say this in the pattern. That's one of the things about the pattern, is it's definitely more of a European pattern where there's some assumption that you as a knitter have the ability and the agency to notice that and do that. So for example, the first time I picked up stitches, I think I had the same number of stitches on either side, but because of the 6 stitch repeat of 3 purls, 3 knits, 3 knits, 3 purls, I ended up not having purl stitches down here. So that wasn't going to work, because it looked like knit to knit. It was, there wasn't a distinguished part of that. And you can see, that's why I was saying I messed this up, because I should have picked up one more knit here and let this be one more purl, and then it would have been the perfect symmetry. After the 3rd try, I was like, we're good enough. So the pattern doesn't tell you that. It just says to mirror what's going on either side. So there are definitely some things in this pattern that I feel like you would need to be aware of knitting logics and problem solving to be able to totally follow along and get the good end product that you want. It wasn't quite as simple as follow the pattern, because the pattern wouldn't quite give you all the instructions. The other thing I noticed was that the number of stitches that they suggested picking up for the sleeves, they wanted you to basically pick up every stitch, which again, you would normally pick up 2 out of 3, 3 out of 4. And there's a reason for it. This does look like what it's supposed to look like from the pattern photos. But as you can see, this gives you an extra, it gives you a lot of play, where if you had picked up fewer stitches, you would end up with more of an armhole, right? That would be a little bit tighter fitting, instead of having this extra fluff down here in your underarm. So the same thing happened. I was very aware of that, because I did the armholes first, the borders. So the same thing kind of happened on the neck line, where the suggestion for the number of stitches that you're supposed to pick up was not I don't think it was correct. I could be wrong. I'm happy to be wrong. Yeah, I ended up with far more stitches on the back. It wasn't double. But I ended up with, I think for my size, I picked up 39 in the back instead of 33. And that was stitch for stitch, because you do need these to be stitch for stitch. You're trying to match the basket weave pattern. And then I picked up actually almost 20 stitches less, 20 fewer stitches on each side of the front than what the pattern calls for. So because I didn't want what happened over here to happen on the front neckline. So I made a choice there. I made a call. I don't know if the pattern is right or not. Like, I don't know if we can talk about right or wrong. I didn't think that what the pattern was calling for was gonna quite work, so I didn't do it. I like the result that I got, so there you go. You make choices in knitting, and then you decide if you like the result or not. And if you don't like the result, you pull it out and do it again, right? I like this result. I think if I had picked up more stitches, maybe it would have been a baggier V, and I wasn't really into that, so that's why I made the choice I did. So I look at this and I think, okay, there are some problems. I can see problems. I think from a distance, other people wouldn't see the problems necessarily. Like, for example, I do see that this looks a little bit funny right here. I'm not super happy with the way that these stitches got picked up. But overall, I'm pretty happy. I mean, I do think, I hope you can see this. Let's see if we can get this to come down to the camera. You know, you do have the basket weave pattern kind of running up into the ribbing, which is nice. These, you know, come off the right places on the side so that it looks finished. You know, it looks like it was planned to be that way. So, and there's a really, I mean, like I said in the beginning, there's some lovely details, like this split hem that runs right into this really thick and chunky cable. Yeah. So I guess my 2 cents on the Vakka pattern would be, it's a little more complicated than it looks. It looks like a simple vest, but the pattern doesn't give you all of the details that, you know, as an American knitter, you might feel like you need, especially if you're like a beginner intermediate. If you've knit a lot of garments, you're going to be just fine because you'll know where you need to fill in the information, I think. Now, as far as like style goes, I put this on and in the end, I'm not super crazy about it. I'll probably find someone to gift it to. Let me know if you'd like a vest. Comment below. I think it would suit somebody else's style a lot more than mine. The model in the photos was wearing like a long dress. I don't really wear dresses or skirts, so I think this would work well if you were wearing like a long dress or a skirt. I also made it a lot longer than what was called for in the pattern. I made it more like sweater length, which I think is like maybe 14 inches or something from underarm to bottom of the hem. And I think it would look cuter if it were cropped. I do think. So one of the things that if I don't find somebody to gift it to, I might go in and pick up stitches and like delete, you know, like the maybe 4 inches of basket weave and then bring the ribbing up. Then it might be kind of cuter. It would be like more of a cropped thing. You could put it over like button-up shirts and things like that. So you could also dye it. This color for me, I'm not as crazy about it. I think dyeing it would be really cool. So there are a lot of things you could do with something like this. But I'm really glad to have knit it because sometimes I knit things just to do them. And I think you all do this too. Some of you are process knitters and you enjoy knitting things to test your skills, to try something new, to refresh your memory, to, you know, like try a different technique or one that you used to use but that you know haven't used in a long time. So for all of those reasons, I'm really happy to have knit the Vakka Vest. And if you're in vest season right now and you're looking at all the vests out there, the other vests may or may not have similar kinds of issues because it depends on who your designer is and how much hand-holding they're going to do, how complicated your texture. You know, if this was just a stockinette thing, so much easier. But something simple like this can actually have some turns that are kind of interesting and fun to knit. Complicated, good problem solving, gets your brain working, love that. And I do think that if I shorten this, it would be kind of cute over like a button-up shirt at work. So yeah, I might just do that. You never know. So that's the Vakka Vest. That is by Susanna Kaartinen. It was in the Len magazine Finish Knits. Same one that I did my hot pants from, which I loved. Cool magazine, really great, fun interviews, good patterns. Yeah, that's what I'll say. Vakka Vest. So the other thing, the scarf that I'm working on that I showed you last time, Lumen by Fiona Alice, I think. I'm still working on that one, making progress, slowly but surely. All the Zoom meetings, great place to do scarf knitting. And the next pattern I want to work on, I think, is Bambuzal, which is by Paula Pereira. I've knit 2 other sweaters by Paula Pereira, I think, at this point. I'm trying to remember. I think there were 2 sweaters by her. Bambuzal came out in the Lane 24, which is their spring issue. I think it's the most recent issue. I got the digital download of that one, and mostly because I like this sweater, though there's at least 1 or 2 other sweaters in there that I do like. The cool thing about this one, and I'll put a picture in here, is that it looks like it has dropped stitches. It looks almost like it has runs, like a pantyhose kind of like run down it, but they're not. They're like part of the pattern. So I just started swatching for it. And I'll give you this. Let's see if the camera will pick up on this. I'll try to do the middle too here. It's a very small swatch so far. But you can see these are the kind of like running stitches that I'm talking about, right? Very cool pattern. It's going to create a really interesting fabric. And this, they call it the Bambuzal stitch pattern, is all over. So it's like all over the body, it's all over the sleeves, and it gives a kind of like distressed look to the sweater, which I love. Plus it's a purple sweater, the sample. I can't resist that. So one of the things about it though is that you need double the yardage that you would normally need for a sweater. And I don't want to quite give away how the pattern does that, but you need double the yardage of a normal sweater. And so I went to my stash because I've really been trying to knit from my stash, as are many of you. And I would have like just enough for like I have sweater quantities of a lot of different yarns, but the sweater quantities I would have like, 3 skein, like this particular yarn, which is, this is beautiful yarn from Canada, which is now harder to source thanks to, some therapy things. Anyway, this is lichen and lace, and this is plum jam, and this is lake. So I had enough lake to make a sweater, and I had enough plum jam to make a sweater. But because this pattern calls for double the yarn that you would need, I thought, what if I just marled them together? Because I have enough if I put them together. So that's what I ended up doing. And you can see the marled yarn, the marled colors right here. I really quite like it. Plus, given that you need double the amount of yarn that you would normally need for a sweater, this yarn seems kind of perfect to me because it's a woolen spun yarn and it's very lightweight. So even if you're cramming in double the, like for me, I usually need about 11 to 1200 yards. This pattern, I think I need 1900 yards or almost 2000 yards. So, double the amount. If you're going to cram that much yarn into a sweater, you don't want it to be really super heavy. Like if you were to use a worsted spun yarn or a really dense yarn, you're going to end up with a very heavy sweater. And that's not what I wanted to do. So I'm kind of happy with marling those two together. The only sad factor for me is that I love lichen and lace, and I've tried to stock up on, like, that's one of the things in my stash. I try to keep like at least a sweater quantity of lichen and lace in there because I just love knitting sweaters out of their yarn. If I use both of these yarns in one sweater, then I'm down to, like, I've used up 2 of my sweater quantities. So yeah, I know, wipe a tear away. But at the same time, it's great for stash busting. So I will have used up both sweater quantities in this sweater. And that seems kind of cool. So, and I will get more lichen and lace yarn because I love their yarn. I think it's Megan is the dyer. And she's great. I've had wonderful encounters with ordering from her, and I love the colors that she has. And I love this particular, this is the Rustic Heather Sport, which is like a single ply, just really lightweight and beautiful and fluffy, and the colors are gorgeous. Anyway, I will order more at some point. And it might be good to just use it in a beautiful sweater where you get the blue and the purple all together. So yeah, that's my plan. This is Bambuzal. And I will be able to give you more of an update on it as I go. I have to finish my swatch. You can see I'm making a nice big swatch this time. And get it soaked, check out what's going on with the gauge and see, but I like the fabric I'm getting. So I think this might be just what I use. We'll just go with this and see what happens. Yeah. All right, yarn folks. That is my Sunday morning with you up here in the yarn room. Vakka Vest, Bambuzal sweater. Yeah, and just a happy weekending wish for you that you make the most of your time and you enjoy your life out there in the knitting world and beyond, and that I will see you in a couple of weeks. So thanks for hanging out. And thanks to the podcast Patreons. That's Bethany, Laura, Lenore, Jennifer, Rose, Kendra, and Nargis. Much appreciation from me. Thanks for supporting the cast. I will see you all in a couple of weeks. Take care. Bye-bye.